I'm Steve Zajic with the LA Times, here with the cast and the filmmakers of The East, and of course, Brit Marling, the star and writer of the film. We've got co-writer of the film. We'll get to the other one in a second. Alexander Skarsgard, the star of the film. Zal Batmanglij, the director and co-writer of the film, and Ellen Page, of course, another star of the film. So thanks, guys, for coming in. What was striking to me about this movie is how it's a very entertaining film and very exciting, but there are some very serious political issues you guys are dealing with. And I thought either Zal or Brit, if you wanted to start and talk a little bit about what kind of ideas you had on your mind in making this movie, which just I should remind viewers that this is about a collective that lives kind of in the shadows, in the woods, that basically decides to take out big corporations via acts of, some would call it eco-terrorism, some would call it activism, and sort of what happens as a woman goes undercover, and that's Brit's character, to try to root them out. And I'm wondering if, Zal and Brit, you want to start by just talking a little bit, what was on your mind when you shaped this story?
You summed that up really well. Can we use that summary?
I was going to borrow that's
what was on our mind.
Activism versus eco-terrorism.
Right. First and foremost, we wanted to, make an entertaining story, because I feel like none of this really goes anywhere if people aren't entertained and if it isn't thrilling. But we also wanted to talk a lot about the things that we were feeling, not just activist feelings. I don't feel like we're necessarily activists, but just feelings about our generation, like what we're all feeling as people in this time. It's a very strange time. For us, we were interested in things like, when we first started writing this story, we were really interested by the idea of a group going into the CEO of an oil company's house and doing an oil spill at their pristine East Hampton house. And the BP oil spill hadn't even happened. And so, it's just so funny to start seeing that. And then, we cast these wonderful people and we started shooting. And I think a couple days before we started shooting, Occupy blows up. And it's just so crazy to be making a movie about anarchy, about, the 99%. And or a movie about the 1% too, and to actually be having it happen simultaneously in the culture. So I was really grateful for that. I mean, I don't know how you felt about that.
No, I think that's all true. We were interested in. We started reading about Buy Nothing Day, and we tried a Buy Nothing Day.
How'd that go?
It actually kind of was really liberating. You look at your fridge differently. You're like, okay, what can I make that's in my fridge instead of what dinner can I go out to? And then we tried a Buy Nothing summer, and we went on the road and we learned to train hop, and we were sleeping on roofs in our sleeping bags, and we met up with different anarchist collectives and intentional communities and organic farmers, and we just spent some time on the road talking with people about sort of what it's like to live differently than how we have been living our lives.
And was your goal in crafting the script, and I want to get to the actors in a minute to talk about what it was like to shoot a movie like this, but was your goal in crafting the script to kind of, did you think you had an ideology or an agenda on your mind, or was it just to raise questions? How were you kind of framing the politics of it as you were writing it?
Well, we came back. I mean, we didn't stay, and so that choice was interesting to us. Like, do you choose to live a freaking lifestyle where you're really off the grid of capitalism? It's a really brave thing to do and a very hard thing to do, and also liberating and wonderful. But ultimately, we sort of came back to make movies and be storytellers, and so I think those are the questions that the movie is also wrestling with.
Yeah, we wanted to synthesize our experience without putting sort of an agenda onto it. And when we brought the actors into it, the thing starts it's like we were sewing the balloon, and then all of a sudden the air comes into it and we have liftoff. And I don't think that I let them speak for themselves, but I don't think they thought about a specific political bent either. It was more about expressing this experience. We actually had some freegans as, I don't know what you would call them, as part of our
cast.
Yeah, they were in our cast.
Right.
And so they, lived and worked and ate with us for the weeks that we were shooting the movie, and that was a really cool experience.
But when I read the script, it's not preachy, and it's not, because it's a very interesting and very hot topic, obviously. But it made me think a lot, and it made me, you ask a lot of questions, and it's not, you're not force fed an opinion by Zal and Brit. That's not how I felt when I read the script, and that's what I loved about it. That it was very rich, and it was very interesting that it was not, when you start out, it's not from the point of view of the East, the collective. It's actually someone who's infiltrating the group and her experience of that. So having a protagonist is actually an antagonist at the same time, which is very interesting. And that was like initially when I read it. That's when you that's what I didn't know Zal or Brit, but that's what got me really excited about it. That it made me think, and it also felt very important, because a lot of, and I think that's you talked about. I don't think it was a coincidence that you guys wrote this and then Occupy happened and all that. There was something going on, and a lot of young people just felt frustrated that they couldn't do anything. They felt like it's you got these big corporations in Washington, and we're so like, how do we change things?
It all
Are we
feels
powerful
locked up,
enough to
yeah.
do something about it?
Oh, and it's interesting to me, and kind of picking up on what Alex was saying, I mean, the idea that there is this sort of untapped frustration, and now it's maybe being tapped. And you have one of the great scenes in the film confronting your father with the idea of this jam that you're really trying to kind of run back on corporate America. How did you feel about all of that?
Yeah, well, I think that's what's interesting, and I think it's what's interesting for people who are on both sides of the equation, and so that's why it gets so ethically sticky. So you have certain people whose aggression that's coming out, understandably, because we are destroying the world, and we live in a part of the world where not everyone, but a lot of people, we eat too much, we consume too much, we throw away too much, and all of that comes from, fear of impermanence and emptiness, and and it's the same in the other way, or the same as what my character's going through in her trauma, and then how that sort of manifests for her. And I think the similarities on all the sides are always so devastatingly shocking, and that can be what's the most heartbreaking about it too. And it's funny because the moment I open my eyes every morning, I'm sort of knowingly oppressing a lot of the world because of my existence and because of all the privileges that we're born with. And that's hard. And it's hard because we inherit this infrastructure. And it's like, do we run away and become anarchists and live in the woods and fight back? Or do we try and navigate it to kind of be the best we can be in our own world and connect with other people? And it's a difficult thing to justify one's existence right now, I think, often.
Well, that's what's interesting. I mean, you have that. I think we all look at the world and have a reaction not dissimilar to yours, or at least what are we doing here? What's interesting is in this film, these people take very radical positions, and I wonder if for all of you, as you are making it, if you're kind of thinking about how to keep in balance this idea of, okay, this is one reaction to it, but it's not necessarily the only one, and of course, as your characters raised in the film, are we going too far? Because I think a lot of people feel like Ellen does, but they don't necessarily feel like they want to join a radical collective and live in the woods, and that their methods may not necessarily be methods we should embrace on the other side. So I just wonder how much you kind of thought about keeping it from going too far.
That's what's so morally interesting about the question. And it's not, we're all individuals in this collective, and we all have, the question is, how far are you willing to go? Is what's morally justifiable? Like, are you willing to kill someone? If killing someone means that you'll save 100 people, is it worth doing? And that's when it gets complicated in the film as well. Like, how far are you willing to go? And because there's no hierarchy in the group, there's no leader.
But it's tricky. I get people's frustration because people can go to jail for pot possession, and it can basically ruin their lives. And then you have the BP spill, or you have companies that basically caused the collapse of the economic system and devastated, countless people's lives, and aren't being held accountable. And sometimes, how could you not look at that and be like, what's going on? Or the way we treat animals, or factory farming, of course people are frustrated, but also a lot of people don't have the information because of what we're constantly fed and sedated with and encouraged to buy, to forget, or
But that's what's cool about making something dramatic and telling a dramatic story, is that we get to push it to extremes that
you couldn't if you were making or
that a lot of people, they'll be drinking their coffee in the morning, feeling frustrated with the world, looking at the news, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican or somewhere in between, or completely right or completely left, you're going to be frustrated with our current situation. I don't think anyone's thinking, wow, this is great, And so I think the beauty of telling a story is that we get to live out okay, well, what if you go to the full extreme? What if you did take action? And so that's the cool thing. And we're not saying that you have to take action, though I think more and more people are going to take action. They are. I mean, I think people are really frustrated. We have to tell stories that deal with this stuff, and we don't have to have an answer. I don't have to tell that guy how to be in the world, right? But I do want to talk about the fact that none of it's making any sense. Like, I don't know how to make any sense of it.
Right. And in terms of crafting the story, to me, it felt like what you guys were doing was saying exactly that. Do you feel like people, and look, this is an entertaining film. We don't want to, I mean, we're at Sundance. We don't want to give people the sense that this is watching an Occupy documentary. It's still a lot of fun, but it's very serious.
I mean, you got these three people to look at. It's a fun movie to watch.
I mean, it's ultimately, all these things are really emotional, dramatic questions. Like, how far are you going to go to avenge your sister's death? How far is he going to go to hold her father accountable for the deaths of people he's never met? Like, how far is Sarah going to go to protect this anarchist she's fallen in love with when she believes in the letter of the law? They're all, like, emotional, dramatic questions. So on that level, it just sort of plays as a...
Yeah, and it dovetails really nicely, I feel like you get, because there's a sense of, I felt watching the film, a real sense of suspense, but then also a sense of like intellectually all these questions that you guys are raising. You talked all about this being in the air. How much do you think among fellow filmmakers this is something that people are thinking about, will think about? I mean, I'm having a hard time trying to decide if this is just a kind of moment where it's like we're seeing films like this, or if it's the beginning of what we've seen in past eras where, you know, in the 60s, where there were years of films and it really seeped into the mainstream that dealt with these questions. Where do you think we are in terms of making films about stuff like this?
Well, I think that we are moving at exponential rate. So that's what's crazy is that, you know, YouTube is only like 6 years old. You know, it's like hard to imagine that. It's such a part of our lives now. iPhones are, I don't know, 4 years old, even less than that. This stuff is entering us, and I think that we are in shock about how quickly things are moving. And so I think that more and more stories are going to deal with the fracturing of our world, the fracturing of our relationships, especially because most movies are about the relationships between people, whether it's between Izzy and Benji or between Benji and Sarah, between the three of them. Movies are about the relationships between people. And as we spend more and more time texting as we're driving, instead of even talking to the person sitting next to us, as we spend less and less time really connecting with people, I think there will be more and more stories about that fracturing, whether it's political or about eco-fracturing, the fracturing of the environment, or it's about the fracturing of our souls. It's like, it's in the air, and I think more and more people are going to talk about it, and they are talking about it.
You see how it's all, you know, profoundly connected, because of course it is, because everything is. And you look at the continual just destruction of the environment, and you look at the rise of mental illness and like children with ADD and autism, and you know, it's all so profoundly connected in regards to sort of the collapse of society as we know it.
This has been an incredibly depressing interview, I'd say. But I was like, wait a second. I walked in feeling kind of okay about the state of the world, and then now I'm walking out just...
I feel it's... Sorry.
The rebellion is positive. Like, these people are coming together and they're rebelling.
And it's kind of a wake-up call, isn't it, as well? Like, with the, you know, when we shot the movie, Occupy Wall Street was going on, and a lot of angry young people said, like, enough. Like, we want to help. We want to hold people accountable, you know, and corporations, and we want people to stand up and
but we're all
take the fight.
Angry as a country. We are angry. The Newtown, you know, Occupy was, I think a lot of people can see it as a fringe, but when something like Newtown happens, I mean, when we heard about it, we were out of the country. When we heard about it, it's just heartbreaking. Something's happening.
But I think that what the film is ultimately is it's about like people coming together and connecting again. And I think that's why the feeling you have when you leave is like, oh, we can all still talk to each other. We can just put the phone down and like have a conversation, and people talking to each other about these things is going to lead to a groundswell of something beautiful and positive that can change everything. So.
No, it really, it's a fascinating film, and I think it works at so many levels, not just the thriller and the kind of serious film levels, but also, Britt, as you're saying, the question of, you know, raising all these questions that you guys have been raising, but still kind of leaving you with a feeling that some change is possible. So unfortunately, we don't have any more time, but I want to thank all you guys for coming in. It's a great movie. We're going to see it out later this year. One of the movies people are talking about here at Sundance. So thanks a lot for coming in.
Thanks.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.